All right. That was a little modern Gothic to get us into the mood for today's show. We're going to be talking about possession, and possession has a couple different meanings. And we're going to explore a couple of different meanings to possession. You guys are in.
Oh, start video. No, we're in. We're just actually watching the end of the clip because it's a few seconds behind.
That's okay. That's pretty wild, huh?
Wow. Hey, we've got the boys with us.
Hey, you got a little green screen action back there today.
How'd that happen?
I was testing, put them up, to see how they are.
That's our sweet. That's our sweet goat.
Yeah, that's actually the middle. The goat staring down you in the middle is Pinchin, our greatest goat, and I have a Pinchin quote on my shirt
this
today.
This is Pinchin on the left. That's Pinchin. That's
maybe that's who's okay. Obviously, she's better at telling them apart than I am.
I know my children, my little darlings.
So hi Robert, hi everybody.
We were mesmerized by the video.
Yeah, so I've been talking to Krys and Steve this morning about how we were going to kind of approach the show, and we were joking around that it'd be great if we could play Jezebel from my life. Yeah,
Jezebel
it's called
Spirit.
Jezebel Spirit.
Oh, the music.
The music from My Life in the Bush of Ghosts.
Oh God, what a great song.
So we were talking about that. I'm like, well, it'd be great if I could find something along those lines that I could play that would communicate this idea of possession. And I stumbled across that clip as I was just looking for, a song that had
pretty impressive
possession with music, right? I just did a search for that on YouTube, and then I found that. And what's interesting about that is that's a Russian director.
Oh.
And I believe it's a scene from a longer movie called The Night of the Wolf. So it kind of fits into what we're going to talk about today.
Gee, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Right. So, and you knew it was Russian because the priest had a bottle of vodka on the altar there.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that is the definition of holy water, right?
Spirit, the spirits.
Did it say vodka? Yeah, I didn't see it.
I didn't say vodka, but what else could it be?
Well, like Robert said, it could have been holy water, but
maybe they're one and the same.
Maybe
they're one and the same.
Yeah, well, that's funny,
right? Because we do know that vodka is a spirit. So
that's right.
Yeah, so we're gonna get into some very interesting territory today. Kind of a mashup of a couple of different themes that are circulating through the media sphere, kind of where we are planetarily, and kind of picking up on a theme that we sort of left off on the last time when Krys and Steve were here, and did a pretty deep dive on Malachi Martin. And Malachi Martin was an exorcist. So we're going to be talking about exorcism later in the show, and really how it relates to sort of the meat of the topic today, which is going to be this thing with the Hunter Biden laptop.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting is after our discussion, we were talking, the idea here was possession. By the way, if you are new to the Friday FARcast, and some of you might be, we're talking with the Crimis, Steve and Krys.
And we're really very wholesome,
You are. You've got the nice white goats behind you, and right. You guys have managed to exorcise your demons over the past years, decades. So the Crimis stop by once a month, the first Friday of every month, and it just happens to be the first and a Friday today.
That's right.
We're totally hitting it. Sometimes,
April Fools.
And it's April Fools, which is why I have the jesters behind me.
Very nice. Yeah.
And we're going to talk about Hunter Biden, who, in my estimation, is a fool, right?
Yeah, a sad fool.
He's like a dark jester.
He is a dark jester, and he's an Aquarian. And I've talked about the relationship between Aquarius and Leo astrologically, because Leo is the sign of the king and the queen. In this instance, the king matters, right? And so who does the king have around? He has the court jester around. And who is the court jester in that relationship? The court jester is Aquarian, because the court jester is disruptive, irreverent, all these things that we associate with the sign of Aquarius. Sometimes the court jester can say things that can be truthful, but also get him in trouble And if the king is, not really happy with what's going on, he might slap the court jester in the head or something like that, right? But it's this device. The court jester is this device so that the king has a check and a balance on his ego. Theoretically, that's the role that they played.
Best example is King Lear, the fool in King Lear. That's certainly the best literary example.
Right.
Whereas King Lear's daughter calls him "thou all licensed fool."
Right. So we're talking about the fool, the jester, to some degree, the clown comes out of this tradition, but really the jester and the fool. In Hunter Biden, he plays that role, right? And who's the king in Hunter Biden's world? The big guy. The big guy, right? Absolutely. So we're going to get into that today. We're going to get into some of the Hunter Biden stuff. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is that when we talk about possession, right? We were looking at it from the Malachi Martin, William Peter Blatty exorcist kind of definition of the word. But possession is also having something in your possession, right? Like the laptop and having possession of the laptop. And what does the laptop become like in that definition? You know what I mean? So we're dealing with two different definitions of possession. One where something is being possessed, a person is being possessed by a spirit or a force. And the other is holding something that you theoretically own and you possess it, the object. So we're gonna play with that a little bit today because it's an interesting dynamic. And why don't we start off with some of the stuff that we wanted to talk about, setting the stage with this. And this is the relationship with the United States and Russia. We'll kind of go in and out of that today as part of this theme, Russia, Ukraine, and that region. And Steve, you wanted to get into the relationship between Russia and the United States during the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, which in a lot of ways creates the tableau for how this thing is going to go down, right? Through 1917, all the way up till now. These are very, very important historical moments that some people may not know a lot about.
Right. Yeah. So I'm just going to give credit. I have a bunch of articles, but this person's book, Matthew,
let me help.
Maybe hold it. Matthew Ehret, who's been
Let's see if I hold
It's got a green
there.
cover, so it's not really showing up in the
Oh, is
green
that
screen.
one? No, it's
yeah,
Okay.
I'll pull it back.
Yeah,
maybe
pull
if
it
I
back
just
a little
stop
bit.
for a second. Anyway, sorry about this. But we'll
maybe
just go to
you
regular
talk.
screen.
What's the name of the book?
The book is called, it's the first of two. It's called The Clash of the Two Americas, Volume 1. And it, he's a Canadian writer, really good historian. His wife, Cynthia Chung, is also a really good historian. There you go.
There we
Hold against
go.
yourself. He's been on a bunch of podcasts lately. We came across him, and he just knows his stuff and he owns it. The people who can just speak this stuff out. All this history. So he's Canadian. And I learned a few interesting things out of this book. One of them is that there was a real push by Benjamin Franklin to make Quebec the 14th colony, including taking trips up there. There you go.
Oh, that's much better.
So really, and this is actually very important in the long run. The fact that Quebec did not become a colony, and one of the things that because Ben Franklin had a printing press, so he is able to print up all these pamphlets, sort of like the thing that worked in the colonies. They're talking 1775. All the pamphlets worked really well, but the problem in Quebec was that it was Jesuit run, and the Jesuits were and Catholic, and the Jesuits were not very into people being literate. And so what happened was they brought up all these pamphlets, but very few people could read them. So that was one of the reasons they think that it didn't go over so well, or they were unable to, to convince the Quebecois to form these little groups and things like that, because the way it happened, little groups, bigger groups, and then eventually joining the Continental Congress. So that didn't happen because Britain tells them that they won't persecute the Catholics. Basically, that's it. So that's the deal that the Brits made to keep Quebec in Canada. Okay. And then the British takeover of Canada is helped a lot by the loyalists leaving America, and that helps establish Canada, and that's a whole other thing. And there's another thing that was really interesting, a good backdrop to this, is that apparently by 1793, well, 6 of the states had banished slavery, and the other 7 states had eliminated any new slaves coming. So back before 1800 even, slavery was supposed to be an over thing in America. And then, of course, what happens, and this ends up running into the Civil War, is that the British do not like that. They did not want the North to have any manufacturing at all. And apparently 75% of the cotton coming from the southern states went directly to India, and because Britain had all the textile mills, and they destroyed all the textile industries in, say, India, which have, this long history of textiles to force their textiles on India and, everywhere they were in the globe at that time. So that's, another thing in the mix, but I thought that was really interesting. And I don't know the exact mechanism by which slavery got reversed in the South, but it did. But we know the Brits were behind it. So the long, simple story is that the Brits have never been our friends. And we really have to keep that in mind when we're looking at things. Mm-hmm. So what happens, so Catherine the Great is the Tsarina at the time of the Revolutionary War. And what happens, they do not want, in general, they see it to their advantage for the colonies to separate from Britain, because Britain, of course, they had just fought the Crimean War, which is a really, what it was like 650,000 people died in that war. Really? It was a really bloody affair. Wow. So they are natural enemies.
And right in the region that we're talking about today.
Exactly. So yeah. So I mean, it was right after the Revolutionary War that Catherine the Great annexed Crimea. No, sorry. It was during the Civil War. I apologize. So anyway, so Britain thinks that, but yeah, we're all monarchies, and you guys hate serfs because they're always putting down rebellions in Russia also. So the Britons think, well, we're all monarchs, we're all related. Send us 20,000 troops. Britain had money, didn't have troops at the time. Didn't have like a hardened battle troops that were ready to go, whereas Russia just had defeated and had a war with Turkey and had just defeated them, and they had some well-trained, established troops. So England asked for 20,000 of them to put down the rebellion in 1775. So we're talking right as things are getting started, right? I think Bunker Hill was 1775. So, and Catherine kind of just plays them along for a while and doesn't say, she refuses, but she doesn't say like a definite no. And so during this whole next year, there's all these sort of news stories. Yes, they're sending 30,000. No, they're not sending their 20,000, on and on and on. So it was a kind of confusing, but I think she was delaying things. And then by 1780, she does something, it's called the Armed Neutrality, League of Armed Neutrality. And what this does, that they continued to trade with us during the revolution, which was ended in 1783. This was very important to us because, they sent us sailcloth, hemp, which was useful for everything, and also iron. So these are things that, could be molded into bullets and things like that. So Britain is expecting to get help from Russia for about a year, and it doesn't happen. So they can't pay for them, they can't bribe them. So what happens is that we have a year to get our army trained. We get our year to set up some munitions and to kind of figure out what, get a game plan for the whole thing. So there was no direct involvement, and there's no it's not like, we love America, we love the American ideal, but it's this long view of, we know that, America is, because it's going to eventually come to the Pacific, is going to be a long time trading partner with us. So this is really smart. So they were able to do trade, but the ships were armed so that the Brits could not put up a naval blockade on the colonies, or at least one, sufficient to do the damage that they wanted to do. Because if you fired on, say, a Russian ship, well, there was a whole league there was like about 10, 15 European nations that would be a casus belli then if you attacked one of them. So the Brits refrained from doing that. So all this to say that Russia really helped us in the Revolutionary War. Then Russia upped the ante in 1780, and they said, look, you send us some troops, we'll give you the island, and I have to look at the name again because it's not an island I know of, and it's not Majorca, it's Menorca, which was it's south of Spain, but Britain had control of it at the time, and they had a big naval station there. And of course, all throughout Russian history, the warm water port was always something very important to them, and still is, hence all this stuff going on in the Crimea. Because all their ships come out through the Bosphorus, and into the Mediterranean from there. So they upped the ante and offered her this island, which was a pretty good deal on their part. But eventually I read two versions of the stories, one where she backed out, and the other where the Brits backed out because they thought things were going well enough in the war. I think they had gotten, the Prussians over there. But again, this sort of bought some time, and by that time the French were able to come here and help us out. And so that's the main story of how they helped us. Without their delaying tactics, the Revolutionary War might have been over, within a few months if they had sent Russian troops here.
Right.
So
that's interesting because that's happening right around the Pluto return, Pluto and Capricorn.
okay.
Interesting development.
I wonder if we can get rid of the back screen because
Yeah.
it's very distracting.
Yep. Yep. I have go to none.
Okay, I think that's better.
So
It was fun, but
yeah,
Yeah,
I
distracting.
was distracting to me to be blinking in and out. Other than that's usually kind of how things go.
felt like we were being possessed by the
It
sheep.
sounds
well,
like
they were
how-
trying,
how
Robert,
these-
but they
It
couldn't
was
get
like
in.
there was
Make it
something weird
disappear.
and supernatural
We
going on
didn't
there.
give them permission.
And then into the Civil War. So not to run this out because it's interesting, but you don't have to make a whole long story of it. That in this Civil War, the Tsar is Alexander II, and in fact he frees this 23 million serfs in 1861, which is, I believe, the year the Civil War began. So he understands the dynamic, and I'm guessing serfdom and slavery aren't terribly different.
Mhm.
So
I think with
What-
serfdom, you have a contract, right? You have a contract and your contract ends at a certain point.
Hmm.
Whereas slavery, I think you're just indentured from womb to tomb. So I think it's a little bit of a difference.
it could be,
Okay.
but certainly the life wasn't much different. So Lincoln actually asks Russia to help, and I thought this was in the beginning of the Civil War in 1862. Oh, and I thought this was just as a point of interest that it took 5 weeks for the knowing that the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. It took 5 weeks for that news to get to St. Petersburg, and that's where Catherine found out. So I just thought that was just an interesting. You think about that vast space, and back in that time, that's what it took for them to hear the news.
Mhm.
So I would figure it would take, maybe that's just as long as it takes a ship to get there.
Mhm.
But I thought that was pretty interesting. So I'm just going to do two quick little readings. One is from the Russian Foreign Minister Gorchakov, not Gorbachev, who writes back to Lincoln in 1862. So just so you know the understanding that people have of the subtleties of what's going on, you know that the government of the United States have few friends among the powers. England rejoices over what is happening to you. She longs and prays for your overthrow. France is less actively hostile. Her interests would be less affected by the result, but she is not unwilling to see it. She is not your friend. Your situation is getting worse and worse. The chances of preserving the Union are growing more desperate. Can nothing be done to stop this dreadful war? The hope of reunion is growing less and less, and I wish to impress upon your government that the separation, which I fear must come, will be considered by Russia as one of the greatest misfortunes. Russia alone has stood by you from the first and will continue to stand by you. We are very, very anxious that some means should be adopted, that any course should be pursued which will prevent the division which now seems inevitable. One separation followed by another, you will break into fragments. So what happens is Russia sends a fleet to New York City and to San Francisco. And this is to prevent another British blockade, especially to control the South. And again, Britain's afraid to get into a war with Russia because they don't want how many fronts they don't really need at this point to deal with number of fronts. And so they themselves hold back from implementing the blockade, and the Russian ships prevent, because well, then I'm going to read the second quote, and this is from the Tsar, because England and France were trying to entreat Russia to actually militarily support the South with actual troops, right? So this is an interview that Tsar Alexander gave in 1879 in the Independent. So in the autumn of 1862, the governments of France and Great Britain proposed to Russia, in a formal but not official way, the joint recognition by European powers of the independence of the Confederate States of America. So they want to recognize them as a separate country. At which point then they can, come in militarily. I will not cooperate in such an action, I answered them, and I will not acquiesce. On the contrary, I shall accept the recognition of the independence of the Confederate States by France and Great Britain as a casus belli for Russia. So they would consider it an act of war against Russia to recognize the Confederate States. And so it's a pretty good measure of support. And in order that the governments in France and Great Britain may understand that this is no idle threat, I will send a Pacific fleet, San Francisco, and an Atlantic fleet to New York. All this I did because of my love of my own dear Russia, rather than for love of the American Republic. I acted thus because I understood that Russia would have a more serious task to perform if the American Republic, with advanced industrial development, were broken up and Great Britain should be left in control of most branches of the modern industrial development. So, so again, this is this, recognition that helping us helps them, not necessarily for helping us. And we see this over and over again with, with the whole, Putin thing, Putin always acting in Russia's interest and not.
And the reverse is true today, where hurting them hurts us. So the sanctions against Russia right now are hurting us. So that's like a mirror image of that.
Yeah, it is a very strange mirror image, because also one could make a case that even though, definition of a civil war is where a country is at war with itself, right? I mean, that's how we understand a civil war. But Ukraine, at a certain point, was a part of Russia, right? It was a part of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And you could probably make a case that this would be very close to being a civil war because of past relationships and past affiliation. And the fact that you'll have people who will speak Russian in Ukraine, and not just the Donetsk area, but also in Kiev. Well, there are people who speak Russian in Kiev. So they probably have family or relatives, relationships in Russia. So it qualifies as a civil war. And so what does Russia do? They kind of get involved in the old civil war, but they're basically saying, let this take place, right? We don't want any undue influence here, at least in the Civil War. Revolutionary War, a little bit different. They've got some skin in the game, and they say, okay, well, these people can be trading partners for us, so maybe we want to strike better deals with them than we do with England, and we recognize that there's all these natural resources, right? But it's the Civil War part that I think is interesting, unlike what's happening now, because we have completely entered into the fray, right, in a so-called civil war, even though we don't have supposedly troops on the ground, which I don't always believe, by the way.
Mhm.
We have supplied the Ukrainians with any number of weapons. Apparently, there's been some news that the Ukrainians have been using American drones and using these drones to drop bioweapons into Russia. So,
I did hear that.
Well, yeah, we heard that possibility, and yeah.
So the United States is now engaging with Ukraine vis-a-vis a drone war, which is completely 21st century wartime tactics.
Or engaging with Russia
with the drone war. Yeah. So they're engaging Ukraine and giving them the drones.
Yeah, that's ugly.
Providing them with satellite imagery and stuff like that, right?
So I just get two more points.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, one of them involves the sale of Alaska, which is involved in all this, which was 1867, and what that did, because so what the Brits did was they rushed to British Columbia to populate British Columbia so that they could establish themselves on that coast of the United States. One of the reasons, and Russia was saying through these internal documents are in the book, that Russia was saying, look, we're not going to hold on to Alaska anyway. Now that they've got the transcontinental railroad in, it's eventually going to connect up to Alaska. They're going to take it anyway, and it's not going to be worth the effort it'll take us to keep it. So why don't we just sell it to them, right? And that way, and then because you get that long strip down the side of Alaska, that kind of would sandwich British Columbia in between two American territories and limit its possibility of expansion and of that. So that was part of it. And then the next part of that was that they hired us, our engineers, to go in and build the Trans-Russia Railroad, the Trans-Siberian Railroad.
Right.
And as early as early 1900s, they were actually doing engineering studies to create a tunnel link to Alaska through the Bering Strait.
It's amazing.
So even then they were talking about, and then, various interests did not want that. And I think maybe the flat earthers didn't want that. Because that's where the shutoff valve is.
That's funny. What's interesting about the American involvement in the creation of the Trans-Siberian Railway. There was an interview a couple of weeks back with Jordan Peterson and Fred Kagan. And Fred Kagan talked about how the Americans were engaged in the Bolshevik Revolution, but they were engaged in a way so that they were there to help the Russians, and specifically in the train in China, right? Not China, Japan. There was this train that would, I think it's the Trans-Siberian, but it was the Japanese leg of this train, and he claimed that the American troops were sent there in order to fight the Bolsheviks. Well, that's not true. The American troops were sent there so that they could keep the train secured so that the Cossacks and the White Russians couldn't take it and take the train into Moscow or St. Petersburg where they could fight. So they were basically holding off the use of that train until the Bolsheviks could get enough people and enough guns and enough armaments, weaponry, gun, to go out there and then take them on, right? Because if you look at the Bolshevik Revolution, I think it was something like 2,000 people. Like 2,000 people flipped Russia. Think about that. That's incredibly significant.
And a lot of money.
A lot of money. So it's these. But they can't take. See, this is really important to understand. Like they can't take Russia in full, right? They have to take a certain part of Russia. And then at another part in time, they'll go out and they'll take care of the rest, right? So the Americans actually played a role in keeping the White Russians from going into Moscow, St. Petersburg, and retaliating against the Bolsheviks. But the way that Fred Kagan talks about is completely revisionist. Like he's basically saying, look, we have a history of being in that part of the world and defending these people, right? To keep them from falling to the scourge and the yoke of communism.
Right.
That's completely wrong. In actuality, it happens in reverse here. So there's this very interesting relationship with the United States and Russia that does have these ramifications, right? And when they go to overthrow the Tsar, that's one of the reasons why they do it. It's not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons because the central bankers are pissed. They're pissed that they got involved and they basically, created a bit of a firewall there for a while in the Civil War.
Right.
So part of it is vengeance.
Yes, because they're always angry. And it's still the case. They're always angry at Russia for helping the United States become a counterbalance to England. And of course, England just spent its whole time through the Pilgrim Society that we've talked about previously, maintaining control through the banking system, et cetera, of the United States.
And the senior executive service.
Yeah, because even I was in college, I was just, I remember taking a course on something having to do with the Soviet Union. And it just became clear to me how alike the Russians and the Americans are. Between even with the literature and with the sports and with the arts,
military,
and the military, there was a certain amount of simpatico amongst the people that at various times people have tried to bolster. And it just ended up that the forces against it have, as you can see, there's just this driving this false stake between us where we should be the best of friggin' friends.
But it's kind of like the magic eye paintings where if you soften your gaze and don't get lost, looking at the trees instead of the forest, there comes into focus a relationship with Russia that is on a spiritual level. There's something ineffable and very subtle of a connection with these two countries, these two superpowers, who on the surface are adversaries, but as Steve was saying, underneath the surface, the people are really in simpatico. There's something else that you can feel it, you can intuit it, you can't quite put your finger on it, but there's something there that someone doesn't want to happen. That there's, how they love to divide us here in the United States, no matter what it is. It doesn't matter whether it's the generation gap, whether it's black and white or religions or Republicans, Democrats, they're doing the same thing on a grand scale with countries. It's like, what can we do to keep a wedge in between these people? Because if those two populations get together for the force of good, we're done for. We're out of here.
Right.
So
and
there's something going on that we need to look at on that level.
And there's clearly more of an opportunity for, say, Americans and Russians to have something in common than Americans and Chinese. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is.
Well,
Right.
know,
And the reason I say that, right, is because in terms of religion, they share a fundamental religious core principle between these two countries, which in China that's not the case, right? And especially now that, for whatever reason, Putin has decided to reinstate the Orthodox Church. So there is some of that, and that was already there prior to the Bolshevik Revolution.
and how many of us are grandchildren of Eastern European emigres?
Yeah, there's that too. So I think to your point, Krys, there's a lot of truth there. And besides, if America can adopt Yakov Smirnov as one of its own, then, then why couldn't we, go a few steps further?
That is okay.
Do you remember him?
He did
No.
a fairly nice movie. I forget the name of it. From Moscow something.
With love?
From Moscow
with Love?
It's not
No?
quite.
I think he was also in that movie where Whoopi Goldberg becomes the coach of the New York Knicks. Wasn't he in that movie? Is it called Eddie or something like that?
Could be. He was in a couple of movies.
Yeah.
Brief flash.
He became the butt of a lot of other comedians' jokes, by the way. Yakov
Right, but
Smirnov.
and if that's also the time, because then you had the Russian invasion of Afghanistan, and then we were back, anti-Russian.
Right. So we're back into the propaganda
1980,
world.
we didn't go to the Moscow Olympics.
Yeah, that was so weird, right? That was just such a weird.
Well, they love
It was
to
a
use
weird
that.
deal.
And
I think that was a Brzezinski move, because
Yeah.
Brzezinski was working for Carter at that time, and he hated the Russians. He's Polish. He hates the Russians.
Yeah.
But Brzezinski what's odd about Brzezinski is that even though he hates the Russians, he doesn't really classically fall into the neocon camp. Like he's kind of his own
Oh, really?
weird agent. Yeah, like there's not a lot of crossover between.
Mm.
I mean, ideologically, they certainly share something, but the neocons are Bolsheviks. That's the one thing that nobody really ever talks about. Like ideologically, they descend from Bolsheviks. They're Trotskyites.
Hmm.
And then they eventually morph into the modern American conservative, the hawk.
Yeah.
They become
Yeah,
the
well,
hawks.
that's right. I think we've talked about them before. They're
They're
sort
extremist
of a
conservative.
synthesis of Marxist Bolshevism and and fascism.
Yeah.
So
So California, this is getting back to the Alaska thing and the British Columbia thing. So, I'm from California. When I was a kid, we'd go on these day trips. And one time we went to this place called Fort Ross. And Fort Ross is on the coast. And it's actually a fort. Ross is Rus. It was Fort Rus. So there was a whole Russian colony
Interesting.
there on the northern coast of California. And in fact, there's a major river there called the Russian River. And it's not Russian like a river is Russian. It's Russian. So let me show you guys this. This is actually kind of funny.
isn't there a Moscow, Idaho too, or something?
I think there is, yeah. So this is a story where apparently Russia has floated the idea that they should get Fort Ross back. This is recent, by the way. So this is kind of interesting. I'm going to play this.
It's curious. Get it back.
Yeah. So let's
Well, if we can have NATO bases in Virginia, we could have, and we have Chinese
all right, hold on.
in Canada.
Do I have this?
Colonists. Now, tensions over U.S. sanctions are prompting some Russian lawmakers to suggest their country reclaim the fort. ABC 7 News reporter Cornell Bernard has that story.
Maybe they're doing a little tour inside.
Fort Ross is an amazing place on 3,000 acres. Check out the stunning views of the Pacific just off Highway 1. And then there's the rich history, reminding visitors that a lot was happening in Northern California long before the gold rush.
Because most people don't know that there were Russians in California in the 19th century.
The Russian River, I guess they named that for a reason.
Russian traders settled Fort Ross in 1812. Their influence is everywhere, from the chapel architecture to the flag, and interactive field trips for school kids, where everyone plays a part, even teachers.
I am the commandant of Fort Ross, and he was in charge of, running this Russia's remote outpost colony.
The Russians only stayed here on the Sonoma coast for about 30 years. In 1841, they sold Fort Ross to John Sutter. Now some in Russia want to take it back. This week, a high-ranking member of Russian parliament suggested that his country should reclaim territories like Fort Ross as payback for U.S. sanctions. It prompted this response from Fort Ross Conservancy CEO Sarah Swedler.
It reminded me that America doesn't have a monopoly on crazy politicians. It's not even worth, talking about the specifics.
Visitors had their own take.
It's on U.S. soil, I don't know. Come give it. Good luck with that.
I mean, that's like saying, let's go get Alaska. They sold these places to us, so it's ours now. Sorry.
Fort Ross became a state park in 1906. It's played host to Russian festivals and a meeting with former Governor Jerry Brown and the Russian ambassador in 2018. The Conservancy said it once accepted donations from Russian companies to keep the park going, but is no longer working with them. And make no mistake, Fort Ross remains a part of California.
Unless the pelt industry comes back with strong force, I don't think there's any reason for the Russians to come back and take Fort Ross.
On the Sonoma Coast, Cornell Bernard, ABC 7 News.
Pretty interesting, huh?
It's interesting. I just don't get it. What's the point? I mean, is it just to needle?
Yeah.
I think so. Why not?
I think the Russians are good at that. I think they like to needle.
Yeah, the bear likes to poke the other bear.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good for them.
So some people may not understand that there was a pretty thriving Russian community there in the north coast of California.
Very interesting.
And Sutter is one of these guys who's very influential in essentially flipping California very quickly
Isn't that a wine
from a
company?
territory into a state. What's that?
Isn't that a wine company? A vineyard?
It is. Yeah, it's like really shitty wine.
Is it?
Yeah. Sutter Creek, I believe is the name of the winery. So there's Sutter's Mill, which is theoretically where they discovered gold. And this guy named John C. Fremont, who very quickly moved California from a territory into the Union. It doesn't take very long. So they're influential in that. Yeah. So it's interesting. Like there's this whole hidden history that people
Very
don't.
interesting.
Right.
And even what you're talking about with Catherine the Great and Alexander, right? Maybe some people know about it, but it's not.
I didn't know.
And I didn't really know much about it at all. I just heard some things, but and this is just another point, and then we can move on if you'd like. That I've come across it before, but I think it really cemented. I was going through Asha Logos' site, and on his site he has a number of like old history books, and I keep on hearing, even Cliff High was talking about it. It's really important to find like books from 100 years ago.
Yep. Because
things that are written now are you're not going to find what people knew then in there. And so that's why I read the quotes, the original quotes. And I just picked up a book. I haven't gotten into it yet, by Samuel Morse, the guy who did the Telegraph in the 1830s.
On the kitchen table?
Who wrote a book about how the Jesuits and the Catholic Church and their influence and everything. And
Samuel Morse wrote that?
Samuel Morse wrote this book
wow,
called Foreign Conspiracies Against the Liberties of the United States, how the Jesuits used the Vatican, foreign monarchies, and the St. Leopold Foundation and subservient Catholic mobs to secretly infiltrate and control America. So that's Samuel Morse, and I think it was in the 1830s he wrote this. Wow. So I just, there's this idea of like finding these old books. Some people are reprinting them. Some companies are making it their business to try to reprint them. Anything, because this is all out of copyright. Anything over 100 years, I think, is out of copyright. So
maybe we should do
anyway.
that.
Yeah,
it's actually really good. That's a good idea for you guys.
Yeah, if I had time and if I had a staff, we would be amazing. But
if anybody out there want to help out the Crimis, I'm sure they would be happy to use your
at the moment
services.
At the moment, it's not even a paying gig for me. So
anyway,
but the point being that there's great old even Samuel Morse, you'd never think of, was writing books on conspiracy.
Yeah, that's interesting. Really interesting. Yeah, and he of course with the telegraph, that was the way of communicating for
Yeah,
a while, right? I mean,
it's really
pre-telephone.
innovative.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think Jasper's a Russian spy.
I think
if
so.
he is.
I think he is.
You can
He's
wear him on
red,
your
right?
head.
He's red.
Yeah, you can wear him on your head. He's a little
I
orange
think
guy.
he's giving away his allegiance here.
Mhm.
He's something.
He's always in on every show, right? He's listening
Is he
in.
chipped?
He's
Maybe he's
listening.
been chipped, Rob.
He has been chipped. I know he's been chipped.
Hmm.
I didn't chip him.
No.
So what's going on with that chip, right? I mean, is
Uh-huh.
a chip? It's like
What's
right
up with
here.
that?
I've seen the X-ray. It's right at the base of his.
Seriously?
Yeah,
So
I've seen
whoever
it.
owned him?
So maybe somebody's sending a little
Uh-huh.
signal through the chip, like, go to the show now.
Pretend you like Robert. Pretend you like Robert.
You see, he just left just now.
Right.
Steal
just
the
left.
show.
Right.
He,
He took
he
umbrage.
knows.
He
He
took
knows I'm
umbrage.
on to him.
Steal
just-
the show.
Yeah, he just got off the couch.
I've
There's something
seen
else.
it.
Oh. This is now I got to bring it up because I don't want to forget about it. But I just did a webinar on the Sabian symbols, and that book Mandala by Dane Rudyer is out of print.
Oh,
And if you could somehow secure the rights of that thing, I don't know who you'd go to, but if you could somehow secure the rights of
Mandala.
that, used copies of that are going for $200. Some, if they're in good condition, $350.
Yeah, well, you would have to either, and because I'm not going to do it, because a lot of people do these books and they're just the crappiest productions. So I would have to, it would probably be worth it if it's not a really long book to have it like, retyped and reset and all that. I mean, that would be the way you'd want to do it, like we did with the Fitzhugh Ludlow
right.
books, is to make new books, but looking like the old books.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, just a professional little.
Yeah, and that was a good, and we enjoyed, we were doing stuff, we were in and out, we had it on while
Oh, right. You guys, that's
background.
right. Yeah. That's
And,
right. Yeah.
but we thought it was really good.
Cool. Well,
Yeah,
why don't
the
we
whole story.
transition into the Hunter Biden talk?
Oh,
Mhm.
boy. Oh, boy.
I sent you guys that Substack article. Did you check that out?
Yeah, and I
Yes, we
printed
could.
it, we listened to a couple of videos and I just kind of blew through it, but I didn't have time to read it deeply, but I've got the gist and I've already known the gist, but
It
yeah.
was really hard to stomach the Ghislaine Maxwell, I'm such a good person who loves the ocean.
Or at the Terramar connection?
Yeah, but I was observing her body language and her body movements, and she was very short of breath. And she was just breathing all from up here. So I don't know if she was really nervous or if this is her normal state. But if you go back and look at it, she's all up here and she's just really forcing the air into her lungs. And
Right.
it made me uncomfortable just to observe her body language. I don't know what.
Well,
her-
maybe we can play one of those videos too
Yeah.
while we're talking about this stuff. So
Yeah.
the laptop, it's interesting because I came up. So I had a show earlier this week, and I think it was last week. And it was like the laptop in hell, and now it's become the laptop from hell. That's what it's known as now. The laptop
be.
from hell.
Should
Mhm.
be.
That's what people are calling it. The laptop from hell.
I've been hearing that for a while.
Right. So this
You're right.
laptop has taken on this demonic. Exactly. Right.
And yeah, and yeah, well,
I would
geez,
say.
take a look at the visage of the owner of it.
Now,
Right.
can an object be possessed?
An object can be possessed. I think an object can also be the object of possession,
Right.
and it could theoretically possess the person who thinks they're possessing the object.
Yeah. So is the
Yeah.
spirit of the day in that object? Interesting that in possession, there's a correlation between the spirit and place.
Mhm.
So why not? I don't see why not. If a spirit could be connected with a particular house or outdoor place or whatever, then why not? Certainly something like a laptop that's electronic, that carries
Especially-
in carrier waves.
Right. And
And
think
they're
about-
detrimental. So, I don't know who was it? Was it was it Rudolf Steiner who was observing that electricity is like a degraded form
Yes.
of like
Something
the
etheric.
it's
Yeah.
something on the etheric realms.
Spiritual.
Yep.
It was
Yeah.
a degraded form. So
Yep.
why not? Why would a detrimental spirit not be riding those waves into this horrible equipment
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
giving off radiation?
Yeah, that's something that Emily talks about in relationship with David Lynch and this whole idea of electricity and these beings riding on these electrical currents,
Mhm.
right? So with the laptop, right? So let's like when we think of a person being possessed classically, like Linda Blair, Exorcist, that person is like a portal to wherever that entity is emanating from, right? They're a portal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right. So the laptop, which, and again, it's not just any laptop, right? It's a laptop that has all kinds of shit in it.
Oh God.
Very demonic shit.
Very dark.
Really dark stuff. And not
Yeah.
even the stuff that we talked about today with the, with the Chinese channel.
Pole dancer or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that stuff is like photoshopped and it's clickbait, really. It's clickbait. But there are other things on that laptop, according to Jack Maxey, that once you see them, you can't unsee them. And because of that, apparently they've left that stuff alone because you can be implicated when you look at that material,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
And
So
infected, not to mention infected.
that's right. So there's all of that. There's all of that really degraded, decadent, and demonic material just from that place on the laptop. Then apparently there are all these transactions on the laptop.
Right. That implicate the big guy.
The big guy and a bunch of other people as well. So even that, you have a spirit of corruption.
The uncle.
A spirit of corruption. Where did we hear that? Right. That's in the Jezebel song.
I wish we could play it. Yeah. But
Spirit of corruption, spirit of greed.
I heard my hearing is grief.
Grief. Okay. Well,
one of the other, either way.
but it's in there, right? So this laptop is this thing that it's almost like a demon box.
Right. It's the Jezebel
the
spirit.
Jezebel spirit.
which,
It really is, right? So
I agree. I have to agree.
now what's also interesting is that apparently there are people that have their own versions of the laptop, right? It's kind of gotten out.
There are multiple.
There are
Very,
multiples. And now you have all this infighting going on with these people that have the laptop.
right.
And it's almost like the laptop is driving them mad, right? There's like this other thing connected to the laptop. It's like,
That's a good insight.
yeah, like madness. It's like they think that they're possessing it. It's really possessing them. It's like it's getting very weird with this
It's
laptop.
driving the dialogue.
Right. Yeah. I just want to mention while I'm thinking about it, no one talks about the previous laptop, the Jeffrey Weiner laptop,
Oh, right.
which is like gone, forgotten,
And Hillary Clinton's laptop.
and that was the one that supposed to had the file marked insurance, which was the stuff about Hillary. That
Right.
according to Eric Prince of
Oh yeah, Blackwater.
Blackwater,
right.
G, whatever it is now.
Yeah.
He said that that it drove hardened New York City detectives to weeping. True or not, whatever. That's the story.
And vomiting.
Right. So supposedly that laptop, and that laptop has completely disappeared. There's no hide nor hair of it, at least in in the discourse.
So that's Anthony Weiner.
Anthony, what did I say?
Yeah, you said Jeffrey. Just to
I conflate.
it's easy to morph him and Epstein
and
together.
Weiner.
I get it.
Yeah.
You got the wine, right?
Yes.
Or Anthony
Epstein.
Epstein.
Right. As I used to say, the Steins of the times.
Right. It's just that is funny. Yeah. So Weiner was just on WABC radio with Curtis Sliwa, the guy who started.
Really?
The Guardian
Red
Angels.
Berets, yeah.
Yeah, he was right. He lost for mayor.
He's got a new radio show. Tony Weiner has a new radio show.
Get out.
Of course, on Sirius.
Or you're not serious?
Let's see what's it on. Hold on. I don't want to try this for 3 weeks. I just want to read this article. Oh, come on, Washington Post.
But while you're looking for that, at every stage of possession, there has to be consent given.
Yes, agreed.
And think about that every time you have to consent to reading it. Oh, I read. Oh, yeah, I read the policy. I consent. I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
We do it all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
So it's on WABC.
On WABC.
Pretty significant station.
77.
Which is it's a New York
77.
radio station. Well, it might be.
Yeah, it's a New York
syndicated.
radio station. So he's back in the news.
Why
Okay,
did they
so
give
he's
him a
reformed.
position?
He's a good dad now with his little Home Aberdeen, whatever, Rosemary's Baby.
Handler.
Put it together.
Exactly. So you're right. People don't really, and again, I mean, think about theoretically the impact it had on the people that, came into contact with it.
Mhm.
Yes.
And had to look at it for professional reasons.
Right. Hardened. These are
Right.
hardened New York City
And I'm
police
sure they're
officers
hardened. Yeah.
who've
Mhm.
seen a lot of shit, and it made, to your point, Steve, it made them vomit and throw up, and some of them are dead now, right?
Yes.
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 Yes. Some of them committed the old suicide.
Mhm.
Right. So this whole idea of the spirit of possession inside of these boxes is kind of an interesting, theory and correlative for this
Mhm.
whole idea of possession in general. And think about Hunter Biden as he's interacting with the laptop in whatever state he's in, right? In
Mhm.
whatever demonic program is driving him.
Since
Theoretically,
his
that's
inception.
also being imprinted into the laptop, right? So there's this transference that's going on with this thing. What do they call it? See, like a mnemonic device or something like that? Is that what it's called?
Mnemonics
Mnemonic devices
is for memory.
and that's just for you to memorize something.
Memorize. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but it begs an interesting question, doesn't it, about that there's sort of a spiritual, and I've used that in terms of non-physical, not positive spiritual, like demons are spiritual, aspect to everything. Because in the end, we're not physical beings, and we're primarily the spiritual manifestations.
Spirits and material world.
Manifestations of our higher spiritual self, and of course this is the of Ahriman or Satan, whatever you want to call him, or it is to bring us into full complete materiality, which expresses itself in the World Economic Forum ideas and all that. Really is
Right. That's something I talked about. I think it was yesterday. This whole idea of materialism versus
Right. And it's right in the word Marxism. It's dialectic materialism, right? Taking from Hegelian dialectics and just taking off the complete any spiritual aspect that Hegel had in it,
That's
and
right.
just making it this blunt movement of history
Mhm.
that goes back in thesis antithesis, but it's just all material, and thus we are all material, and so
Expendable.
right.
Exactly. Materials expendable. That's the word that came into my head.
Mm.
And emotions and emotionalism are the fuel for that materialism.
Very much so.
And that's
Boy, bingo.
and that's been part of the education system
Mhm.
since then, is what we could call, for lack of a better word, emotional thinking.
Mhm.
And how do you
For-
feel
yeah.
about this? And I feel this and I feel that, and I'm triggered, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, they call it value-based education.
Okay, right. Speak your truth, which is fine, but your truth may have nothing to do with anything.
But it's their truth, and they're not going to
It's
listen to
their
anybody
truth,
else's
and so
truth.
yeah, and it's like everyone gets their little fucking trophy for
So
their
everybody's
their
been
truth.
kind of maneuvered into a corner, really. You're in that corner, you're in that corner, and you stay in that corner.
So what happens, and this is something that they've discussed on Jason Whitlock's show, in terms of this whole idea of subjectivity, and that once everything becomes subjective, then the goalposts keep getting moved for whatever you want to affirm as so-called reality,
That
right?
makes total sense.
So there are no objective kind of guidelines of what reality is like, or what happens when you do a certain
Well,
thing.
There's a line in the Bhagavad Gita that says, I find no firm ground.
So what happens when you are living in a subjective state and your identity is dependent upon whatever is being determined to be the right thing to say or do by the most dominant voice that's being articulated in this conversation, people go mad.
Yes, they do.
They go mad because they have no center, right? No center. And this is where we get into like Yeats and the Second Coming, which is really kind of what's taking place right now. There's that line in the Second Coming where it's in the end, the worst are filled with passion and conviction, while the best lack all, what is it? All, I
can't remember, but they're enervated. They don't.
But it's basically the best lack all, the worst are filled with passion and intensity, while the best lack all conviction.
There you go.
Right. So when we see this kind of emotional Sturm und Drang, we're seeing the passion and the intensity, right? Oh my God, this is so important. It's so important, until the next thing comes along. And then that's really important. And the best lack all conviction, meaning, hey, look, I'm not getting in. I'm not being drawn into this ongoing kind of subjective hell.
Right. And it ends up becoming, and this is, you can just see the movement of philosophical and scientific history. Everything moves in further and further abstractions. And I think we've reached the point of complete abstraction. So you're talking about what are we abstracted from? Really, we're abstracted from ourselves as knowing who we are as spiritual beings and what have you. So, so some things like Marxism pull you further and further, away from any sort of solid base from which to operate your life from. So Krys and I were very lucky to have studied with some really good people, and spent 11 years studying a traditional system, which was the yoga system, and the Yoga Sutras, and learning Sanskrit and all that. And what that has given us is a base, a really solid spiritual base, because it's just not enough to just have the experiences, which are really important, but also to have something to articulate them through, so that you can live your life through those experiences.
Right.
But what has happened now, and especially with something like Marxism, which denies spirituality completely, unless you're doing Yoruba like the BLM people, that's where that's where you're stuck. So you end up further and further from that base, and until a point where you don't even know it's there anymore.
Right.
That's an embodiment.
So that's why I consider us lucky to at least have that foundation. And as as screwed up as things get and as painful as things get, we still have that all the time, to come from
and to go back to.
So let's just take a look at like extreme snowflake Karen behavior. What are these people like representing? They're representing a form of possession. It feels like they're possessed.
Yeah.
Like that woman on the plane, snapping at the young guy next to her.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Because he had just come from a Trump rally or something.
He was wearing some kind of Trump gear. And this
he
woman,
was just sitting there minding his own business.
She could not stop running him and Trump down.
No.
She was possessed.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a good time to bring up, there are actually 4 stages.
Before we go there,
Okay.
I do want to look at this one article.
Okay.
Because this article, I think, is a real skeleton key for this whole Hunter Biden thing. And this is something that was sent to me by Sam, and it's on Substack.
Oh, good old Sam. Yeah, we talk to Sam every once in a while.
Yeah,
Seems to be doing okay.
Hi,
Sam turned me onto this. So apparently this is part of a series. So COVID-19 Deep Dive Part 5, Human Traffickers.
Okay. And where do we say he's from? This representative is from Missouri. Is that what I looked up? Do you remember?
I think so.
Robert?
Yeah, I think it is Missouri. Yeah. So maybe we can just play a little bit of this and kind of skim through this, and then we'll come back to the possession thing. It's 10 minutes long. We won't play the whole thing.
Okay.
He was very good.
Time for another Charlie Kelly, Pepe Sylvia tutorial here. Last week we covered the fact that the Fauci's organization, NIAID, and NIH, the parent organization, were sending money to something called the Eco Health Alliance, which was doing dangerous gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where it is increasingly likely that this entire pandemic started. Now, what's interesting is now the media, the very same media sources, mainstream media sources, who threw cold water on the lab leak hypothesis a year ago and said it was crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy theories stuff, are now actually starting to reluctantly admit that there may be something to it. But you have to go back and look at what the mainstream media was saying a year ago. The New York Times called it a fringe theory dismissed by the scientists. That's going to become important in a second. I'll explain why. CNN basically parroted Chinese Communist Party propaganda, saying that this was a disinformation effort on the part of the Trump administration. The Washington Post attacked Senator Tom Cotton and said that he fanned the embers of, fanned the embers of a conspiracy theory that has been repeatedly debunked by experts. So the entire mainstream media's narrative was reliant on their expert sources, right? So let's plant a flag there and come back to that. Okay, it's good that people are now focused on all of Dr. Fauci's role and then NIAID and NIH funding.
So I'm going to stop that there, because what he's talking about will become a big part of this post, the experts and the money that's used to pay the experts in order to support this narrative that nothing happened there, and it's just hogwash, and this is really what we're dealing with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
They've done a good snow job with the experts. They've
Right, and
seen
they did this with
everything.
after 9/11,
everything.
right? With all these military wonks who got on Fox, who got on CNN, who got on MSNBC. I don't think MSNBC was around that, but CNN was, Fox certainly was, and then you had the networks, and they get on there and they just say, "Oh yeah, they've got weapons of mass destruction." And
But this is where the education system comes into play, because that's where it starts. When you're in grade school, you are to rely on authority.
And they paid those guys. Those guys were paid, and they were paid by Raytheon and Rand and all these other corporations to go on there and basically lie through their fucking teeth so that the neocons could get their war. So this is interesting, right? So it starts off here, and it gets into this ground truth network. This is where he's going with this. And the ground truth network is NBIC, right? And the NBIC is getting money from the Department of Homeland Security. And what they're doing here is they're essentially paying these experts in order to back the narrative of NIAID and the WHO and the CDC, right? So this is part of what they're talking about here. These are actual documents. So it says the NBIC is seeking market information to determine existing capabilities of ground truth networks, domestic and globally, that support biosurveillance and meet the following initial requirements. Provide
Biosurveillance.
Provide both direct and indirect access to a consortium of subject matter experts, SMEs, with global coverage in key areas, including the US, Asia, Africa, South America, et cetera. Network must contain experts in the fields of human, plant, food, environmental, and animal wildlife health, the entire biosphere. Provide NBIC with the identity, background, and credibility of the sources from whom information was obtained, and whether or not each source can be identified and attributed in subsequent NBIC reporting, and at what level federal partners only, SLTT, formal parties, etc. Page 203, ability to have SMEs interface with NBIC analysts through written documents, emails, written reports, maps, data, oral communication, phone calls, conference call, and face-to-face meetings. Request information available to receive and respond with necessary information, sharing requirements to requests RFIs within 48 hours, respond to at least 50 RFIs within the performance period. So all of these things are guidelines for their contractors. The people that they're taking that $1 million, grant from the Department of Homeland Security to pay. So this is the background of how they're able to control the narrative and push their agenda, right? Push
And they're
whatever.
required to go to the experts. It says it right in there, up in that other paragraph. They're required to do that.
And and as we know, the agenda is fluid, and they don't care if they contradict what they did before.
That's
I believe I'm pretty sure it was on your show, because we don't talk to anybody else but you anyway. But we were said at the beginning of the lockdowns that in a number of years, the New York Times are going to be saying, "Oh, we were always against the vaccine.
That's right.
We always knew what was going on.
Right.
We've always been at war with who?
We were always, we always
always
knew
at
there were
war
there was no weapons of
Oceana?
mass destruction.
Yeah.
It's just like, they never say, "Oh, we fucked up." It just never happens.
Right.
If it is, it's on a minor detail and page 83.
Right. Exactly.
I never knew of this man Gallagher, Congressman Gallagher.
Right. Yeah. So
But
I think
he really seems like he's got his act together, and he's got a good, strong presence,
Mhm.
and he feels very self-assured. I'm wondering if he would be a good ally for Madison Cawthorn, because he's rather
you
young.
mean the Tom Brady clone?
Tom Brady clone.
Oh, how is he Tom Brady?
He just looks like him. He looks like Tom Brady.
Does he? Well,
Yeah.
he's a lot younger.
Oh, he's got a lot of passion.
But he's got,
He's young, but
sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
I sat next to him when
At
he
that
showed
meeting.
up at the meeting of our Freedom.
Oh,
group.
really? That's interesting.
yeah,
the
we were
one-
right next to him.
Right, where that little clip came out about him calling Zelensky a thug. Well, he called
Right.
Putin a thug. He gave actually a really 15-minute talk
was-
on Ukraine that was fairly nuanced. But he's in a wheelchair, and he obviously works out because he had big ass
was-
tattooed arms.
He was exuding strength. I was really impressed. I didn't.
So
ever
he's from your
really
neck of
think
he's from your neck of the
He's our
woods, right?
congressman.
He's our congressman.
Right. Okay, cool.
And he was very passionate and very sincere and informed.
Yeah. And he also said it that someone asked him a question about Pelosi being drunk. And he basically said, she's never sober.
And he said, what did he say? I can't be seen having lunch with Democrat. They will not be seen having lunch with me, a Democrat. They wouldn't dare, because they would be censored.
They'd lose their committee positions. Pelosi would just
Wow.
hack them off. They can't even people that he might get along with just to talk, So they can't be seen with him now, especially.
But I
now.
thought he was very brave, and for his age, he's only 26.
Mhm.
Very well informed. I think there were some issues, I can't remember now. Maybe it was to do with the inoculations or something that he seemed like he needed a little help to understand. But
So he busted out some eyes wide shut kind of stuff.
oh my
didn't he?
God.
Yeah.
And then McCarthy said, I'm going to have a talk with him. Well, who the hell are you?
Right, exactly.
So I'm wondering if this guy Gallagher would be a good ally. Anyway, that was a digression. But
So this is Nathan Wolf, and he is the founder of Metabiota. So he's one of Klaus Schwab's people,
Right.
World Economic Forum Young Global Leader.
how many times has he consented to letting in the dark forces?
Oh, maybe from birth, who knows? So Dr. Nathan Wolf is the Lori I. Loki. Interesting, Loki.
That's
Loki.
interesting. Loki.
Oh, look who's here.
Why?
Rosie's here.
Rosie.
Yeah, come on up here. You want to jump up here?
We brought him in.
Here we go. Oh,
Right, right. Should I check?
here we go.
Hey, Rosie.
What a treat.
Aw, she's a beauty. She's a beauty.
Low-key Business Wire consulting professor in human biology at Stanford University, is a founder of Metabiota, a company that specializes in microbial research, products, and services, and the chairman of Global Viral, a nonprofit that promotes understanding, exploration, and stewardship of the microbial world. Dr. Wolf received his doctorate in immunology and infectious diseases from Harvard in 1998, where no doubt he ran across Charles Lieber, I'm sure.
Mm.
He has received numerous awards, including a Fulbright Fellowship and the NIH Director's Pioneer Award, and was named a National Geographic Emerging Explorer in 2009. And World Economic.
Yeah,
We were
National
noticing that
Geographic.
National Geographic shows up
Keeps on
in
coming up.
interesting places.
It keeps on coming up now. I didn't, never thought.
Oh yeah, they got possessed.
Yeah, I think so. And the Smithsonian.
Right.
There's
Yes.
Right. And it's, and you have to go back to their English, I assume English beginnings, sending people all around the world. They're not sending them, for the pure joy of exploration. They're looking for acquisition, manipulation.
Right.
Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
World Wildlife
theft.
Fund,
And
that we all
theft.
fell for that.
Yeah,
one,
the
too.
botanical people, et cetera.
Right.
We can
Yeah.
had.
What else do we have here? Okay, so he's a young global leader. Dr. Wolf has over 8 years of experience living and conducting biomedical research in Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa,
Mhm.
and he currently coordinates activities of over 50 scientists and staff in countries around the world. So this guy is a somebody.
Mhm.
Right.
He has received support totaling some $60 million in grants and contracts from Google.org, the National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the U.S. Department of Defense, among others. He has over 80 scientific publications, and his critically acclaimed book, The Viral Storm, has been published in 6 languages and was shortlisted in 2012 for the Royal Society's Winton Prize. Metabiota are directly linked to EcoHealth Alliance, which is unsurprising,
There you go.
given that their stated objectives of zoonotic virus surveillance run along similar lines. In fact, Nathan Wolf sat on the board, on the editorial board of EcoHealth Alliance, as well as DARPA's now defunct Defense Science Research Council.
DARPA's another one.
However, it gets even worse. Nathan Wolf is also directly linked to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and is one of the founding citizens of Ghislaine Maxwell's fake philanthropic organization, Terramar. Let's just play a little bit of this.
Yeah, before you hit that,
Meet virologist Nathan Wolf.
Good.
I just wanted now I forgot. I just wanted to add in something that you mentioned for the first time, dawned on, made sense. Back when the Parkland shooting went on, and we were looking at the father of, and I can't remember his name, the guy who was kind of the main focus of shooting the movies that were,
Wasn't Hogg.
obviously of the fake. Yeah, David Hogg.
Oh.
You're looking at, it was his father, right? And he
Yeah.
just
Oh,
had
right.
this amazingly long resume, and it's like,
And he was in intelligence, wasn't
right.
he?
Well, that's the key. So, it's like,
Yeah.
how do these people look like they've got 75 lives crammed into one?
Right.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
so much going on, head of this, running that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is fake.
Exactly. That's my
Really?
point. These are all created people. They're not real people. They're all golems in a sense.
Hmm.
Right.
They're all created people because, I freaking, all year long, I publish one book. I think I've accomplished something, it's just amazing, what.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so obviously these are not people, but sort of, the pimple on the head of something.
Hmm.
Right. It's like, yeah, think about managing all these different people, projects, platforms, ideas.
Well, oftentimes when you sit on a board, it's just a show. It's not, you don't really actually do anything. You don't, maybe once a year you go to a meeting,
Right.
right? So I'm on the board of this, that, and the other thing.
Yep. That's
You
true.
know?
That's true. But this guy has his hands in
But see,
research.
this is running stuff. This isn't just
running
being on the
stuff, yeah.
boards. Yes. But the boards are like, it's like the old monarchy,
Yep.
everybody's related to everybody else.
That's right.
Incestuous.
You got people that sit on the board of General Motors, that sit on the board of Standard Oil.
Mhm.
Gee, what's going
And it's a
on?
good gig.
Yeah. All right, let's play a little of this here.
Who was dubbed the Indiana Jones of virus hunting. He sits on the board of EcoHealth, the same company under scrutiny for manipulating bad coronaviruses at the Wuhan lab. In 2011, Nathan Wolf published a book entitled The Viral Storm, The Dawn of a New Pandemic Age. In the book, Wolf thanks 16 friends for contributing their skills to his work. One name listed was Jeffrey Epstein. Here is Nathan Wolf pictured with Ghislaine Maxwell at the Lincoln Center in 2012. Here's Nathan Wolfe with Ghislaine Maxwell at the X Prize Gala in 2011. And Wolfe was even a founding member of Ghislaine Maxwell's fake ocean charity Terramar, as archived on Terramar's own website. Terramar connects to many shady Epstein-connected characters. Here's Wolfe endorsing Ghislaine's Terramar on Twitter in 2013, stating, quote, "Proud to be a cyanobacteria ambassador at Terramar Project," unquote. Needless to say, Wolfe appears very tight with the two notorious sex traffickers. So who is Nathan Wolfe exactly? Well, Nathan Wolfe is affiliated with the United States intelligence apparatus, the CIA, serves on DARPA's Defense Science Research Council, was funded by the United States Department of Defense, Google, Bill Gates, and the National Institutes of Health. He is a major player on the world stage. His company, Metabiota, is funded by In-Q-Tel, which is the CIA's technology arm. Former CIA Director George Tenet said of In-Q-Tel, quote, "In 1999, we chartered In-Q-Tel. The In-Q-Tel alliance has put the agency back at the leading edge of technology," unquote. Nathan Wolfe's Metabiota was also endorsed by one Hunter Biden. As stated, Wolfe serves on the editorial board of EcoHealth, the same EcoHealth that was awarded a grant by Fauci's National Institutes of Health in 2014 to study the emergence of coronaviruses, 6 years prior to COVID. This research then appeared to turn into the manipulation of coronaviruses called gain-of-function research, which created much more transmissible viruses, perhaps like COVID-19. Wolfe is also the founder of the organization Global Viral Forecasting Institute, or GVFI, a company started in 2007 to study infectious diseases, their transmission between animals and humans, and the risk involved with their global spread. In 2013, Nathan Wolfe sent out Joseph Fair, his vice president, directly to the Wuhan lab. Here is GVFI's Dr. Joseph Fair meeting with Shi Zhengli, the main researcher at Wuhan lab. So here we have two shady Nathan Wolfe affiliated companies associated directly with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, EcoHealth, and GVFI. Here are pictures archived from Wolfe's GVFI's website, the so-called virus hunter himself, bats, bat virus samples, and bat imagery. Nathan Wolfe also collaborated with the president of EcoHealth, Peter Daszak. Peter Daszak, the main suspect behind the Wuhan lab leak theory. An archived article from 2008 states, quote, "Dr. Wolfe is working with Peter Daszak, the Consortium for Conservation Medicine, to study the so-called wet markets of China, where SARS began. They will inspect the animals sold in them and test their stall holders and customers for signs of dodgy viruses," unquote. That's 12 plus years prior to COVID-19. Prior to the pandemic, it appears EcoHealth and Wolfe's GVFI were the only U.S.-based organizations researching bat coronavirus evolution and transmission in China. Peter Daszak's and Nathan Wolfe's companies, which appear to be controlled by the intelligence apparatus, quite possibly created the pandemic through gain-of-function research and were sent out to cover up the lab leak theory which they created in the first place. Oh, and by the way, in Nathan Wolfe's book, Dawn of the Pandemic Age, Wolfe also thanks Boris Nikolic, the executor of Epstein's will. Nikolic, who was infamously pictured at Epstein's mansion with Bill Gates and Epstein himself back in 2011, would found Particles of Humanity with Robert Langer, the founder of Moderna. Particles for Humanity openly endorses a skin-embedded mass surveillance tracking system.
So that is Nathan Wolfe.
Particles for Humanity.
So I never heard of Gallagher before. He's formidable.
Yeah.
I've never heard of him anywhere in the news.
So yeah, so interesting. The
Let's play this Ghislaine Maxwell clip real quick to hear
very
her.
little, very little.
Very little.
On the stage here, we have Glenn Maxwell, founder and president of the Terramar Project, a nonprofit.
Was it a high school or something?
A global ocean community to protect and promote sustainable development of the ocean. Glenn is easily one of the smartest, most fascinating people I've ever met. This is proven by the fact that she holds a bachelor's and master's degree from Oxford University, is a private helicopter pilot, a trained EMT, a qualified ROV, which I had to look up what that was, and a deep worker submarine pilot, in addition to being fluent in 4 languages. This is what I had written down before I realized that she spoke at the UN 9 times since the last time I saw her.
Right, project called the Terramar Project. It's an ocean-based digital platform which I'm going to be talking to you about.
Yeah, her breathing is really shallow.
Watch your breathing.
I just want to go back briefly to talk to you about why I got involved in the ocean, and
Nothing can come from her heart.
To have history. Right. So I started diving when I was 9, having become.
Anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to hear her voice.
Yeah, I had never heard her voice before.
Yeah, I have, but not in that context. So for people who are interested in this article, I'll leave a link.
It was very good.
In the show notes here. And here we go. It goes right into Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
In 2009, he founded Rosemont Seneca. The firm also has provided funding to Metabiota and their operations in Ukraine. So it all ties together here, right? And I guarantee you, if you go deep enough in that laptop, this stuff will just pop.
Ooze out.
Right.
It'll ooze out. Yeah.
It's
exactly.
It's there. I mean, I've heard people talk about it, that it's there.
And so you can see where we have Metabiota at the center in this entire flow chart and who's connected with it. And there she is, Mrs. Biscuits, wearing her Ukrainian blue sweater as a signal virtue. So I'm going to put the link in here.
It was good.
It's a really good, thorough piece that connects a lot of different dots.
Yeah.
And it all comes back to Hunter Biden. Right. Hunter Biden is like the keystone to this whole thing.
He really is. Pull that out, the whole edifice comes apart.
Exactly. And now we have this other interesting wrinkle is that Joe Biden, I think, is about to be managed out.
Oh yeah. It feels that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because Peppermint Patty is leaving. She's leaving the show.
Is she?
She's insufferable.
Is she? You know, everyone.
She's got a deal, I think, with MSNBC to have her own show. So she's leaving now. She's leaving the Biden, whatever it is.
And and wait about a month. She'll have a book deal with Simon & Schuster.
Oh, they've got plans for Peppermint Patty. So there's this video out. It's a very brief clip. It's been out for a while. And it's actually when Rush Limbaugh was alive and Biden was president. And he said that when Obama wants to pull the ripcord on Biden, it'll happen. You'll see it. The press will turn on him and people inside their own administration will turn on him. That started to happen, by the way.
It has. Mm-hmm.
Started to happen.
Not
so
rocket science.
No.
So 46 has outlived his supposed usefulness.
Right. Well, we're all surprised he lasted this long.
I thought he'd last a month, but I was wrong.
But I guess things are not. Well, I think Harris, even if it has been a disappointment to them, even on their own level. So I think what's behind, I don't think things are set up for Biden to be taken out yet.
Well, I think they'll bring Harris in. Right, they'll bring her in, and then I think they'll bring Buttigieg right behind her, and then the question is, does Harris last?
Who could she possibly?
Right. Well, the question also, and maybe I don't know specifically. So does a new vice president have to be approved by the Senate?
Yeah, but that would be easy. I think pretty much a slam dunk. So how long would Harris last? Harris may not even last her own term. And all of a sudden you're dealing with, Pete Buttigieg, President Buttigieg, which I don't think
how does Buttigieg come into play and not Pelosi?
Oh, well, so first of all, this is just my own opinion, but they need to have a man behind Kamala. and they need to have a white man behind Kamala, but it can't be.
Why?
Why? Because it's about positioning and hierarchies.
But I thought it went to the Speaker of the House.
No. Goes to
only
President.
if they both get taken out.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah. Right.
Didn't know that piece of it.
Right. So Harris moves in.
Oh, okay.
And I would say Buttigieg is the guy that, gets the vice presidential nod. And then how long will it be for Harris to be in that position? You could see a sea change of two presidents by the time 2024 rolls around.
It could be,
So
maybe they're holding out for the midterms
That
to see
sounds
how
kind of far
see how
off.
well they can control them.
Yeah, well,
Because if they lose the House,
right.
And
I think the reason why this is happening, it has something to do with the laptop. The laptop is like this wild card that's been thrown out there.
It really is.
And now, they're looking around and go, okay, well, all the goods are in that laptop and they all lead to the big guy. We got to get rid of the big guy. It's time. Right. So even now
we really need to bring in the framework of possession.
Yeah. So the agents of the Lugan press, like the New York Times and the Washington Post, are now admitting that the laptop is there and legit, right? And that gets into possession, because when we talk about the press and the media, they have the ability to literally possess people's attention and people's ideologies, and even to some extent people's memories.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think this is where we could get into the possession thing.
Right. So there are two things. So then how does possession occur? What are the stages? There are 4. And then with exorcism, how is it extracted? There are 6. Okay. So I don't know if it'll help if I put the light on. Yeah.
It'll help you.
It helps a lot. I mean, it'll help me. So the process of possession is in 4 stages. And it's hard to pin it down in retrospect, but it has been done by interviewing the people who have been possessed and gone through exorcisms. But the first is the actual entry point. And that's the point at which the evil spirit enters an individual, and a decision, however tenuous, is made by the victim to allow that entry. And oftentimes it hinges around some kind of maybe an obsessive thought that a person has, or a very distinct interest in something where they're obsessed with it. There was a case of a woman who was in college, and she was in a philosophy major, and her courses were in philosophy, and she was obsessed with certain details. And then someone shows up in the park that she goes to and sits on the bench with her and has these deep conversations and draws her in. And it was never really determined, well, was that a physical person or was it in the etheric? But however tenuous, there's a welcoming in.
It's like the number 23, right? The whole story about
Mm-hmm.
being obsessed with the number 23.
Yeah.
Right. Cosmic trigger.
Yeah, the cosmic trigger. Then is the stage of erroneous judgments. The possessed has, by the possessed in vital matters, as a direct result of the allowed presence of the possessing spirit, and apparently in preparation for the next stage. So your judgment is affected.
Right.
All right, you're starting to make, well, that's where the emotions come in. So if you disturb someone's emotions, then their judgment is off. So the third step is voluntary yielding of control by the possessed person to a force or presence he clearly feels is alien to himself, and as a result of which the possessed loses control of his will, and so of his decisions and his actions. So now there's like a more aware state of mind that there is something going on, but you still, because it's the rewards are good, it's like you keep going for the dopamine hit. So you keep saying yes, 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 but you're aware that you're entering into choppy water. Once the third stage is secure, extended control proceeds and may potentially reach the point of compliance, which is what's called perfect possession. And when there's a state of perfect possession, that means if it's actually perfect possession, even an exorcism can't undo it.
So let's stop here just kind of apply this to, the collective. What were people obsessed about from 2016 to 2020?
Bad Man Orange.
That's right.
And they whipped that up. They sure whipped that up into a frenzy.
So that is a stage, right?
It is absolutely a stage.
Trump derangement, and they didn't call it derangement for nothing.
Yeah, Trump derangement syndrome. So then, let me see where I am here. Okay. At every new stage and during every moment of possession, the consent of the victim is necessary, or possession cannot be successful. Once consent has been given, its withdrawal becomes more and more difficult as time goes on. That makes sense. Now, for the exorcism itself, there are 6 stages.
Hold on one sec before we go there. I want to just bring this into the conversation as well.
Yeah.
So let's say, for instance, that part of this thing that goes on with possession is connected to obsession, but then the individual has to do something and become complicit, right? They have to become complicit with this thing that's overtaking them. And if we zoom out and look at the Orange Man bad and the people that were obsessed with that, like, what would they do over the course of that period of time? Well, obviously what happened is that they made decisions about who they were going to relate with or not, right?
Isolation
And family members.
and distancing.
But the distancing and the cutting off of those relationships is sacrificial.
Yeah, good.
They are sacrificing something that they've loved, either a friend, a dear friend, or a family member, right? And they are sacrificing and giving that sacrifice over to the thing that they are obsessed about and then possessed by. So there's your complicit piece around, and they know probably that they're doing this and they can't stop it.
And they can't stop it. And we have a friend who shall remain nameless, whose family distanced themselves from her and saying that she was a white supremacist, which is like, I mean, so off the charts, not true. That made no sense.
For not getting inoculated.
Yeah.
I mean,
but that made her a
leads to
white supremacist and what have you. But
so does that make sense? Can we like, there's an operation going on here, right?
Well, that's why I was excited about these 2 books. So, the Windswept House gives you a great understanding of how this dark force first came into the Catholic Church. And why wouldn't you go right for the main target, right? So just go right to the heart of the problem, get any force of good in the world turned and flipped. And then from there, you work out to all the other heads of government, okay? But that's how I see it. So that kind of excited me when I saw that. And I saw the parallels to what was going on with the Trump administration, what was going on with the Pope, how they infiltrated there, and then what was going on with Trump. That's what I saw. So when you enter into an exorcism, and then it would be really great as we go along if we could relate this to where we are today as a people, as a planet, actually. Yeah. The first thing you have to do is go through a very extensive psychiatric evaluation to be sure that there's not some other force at work here. And it really is truly
like a chemical imbalance or something like
anything like that. So it really truly is a possession. So that gets out of the way first. It's usually carried out at the home of the possessed. So it's got to be in a place where that person is familiar. The actual room is most often one that has some special significance for the possessed person, like their bedroom or something like that. And there's a close connection between the spirit and the physical location, which I think is key. just reading
So we
that
got to
and
go to the
knowing-
White House then, right? I mean, that's where it's got to happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this runs through virtually every exorcism and must be dealt with as a fact. The room must be cleared of all furniture and movable objects for obvious reasons. They'll be flung all over the place. Only a bed or a couch is allowed, and there's a table with candles, a prayer book, and just only accoutrements that the priest would need. And
Kind of like that church
anyway,
scene we saw at the beginning of the show today.
Right. Only pared down, and the windows are usually boarded up so that no one's defense.
Kind of like the White House, right?
Yeah. Oh, very good, Robert. Keep going. All right. No one but the exorcist may speak with the possessed at all. You do not get drawn into anything whatsoever. Only the priest does it. The church provides an official text for the exorcism, but it's merely a framework. So they have their little steps that you go through in prayers that you say. And then, then my note about perfect possession is fully complete and cannot be reversed. So find my numbers here. Okay, so the 6 stages then are presence, pretense, breakpoint, voice, clash, and expulsion. Presence, everyone in the room is acutely aware of an alien presence, and there's no point to it. It's not like, oh, it's over here, it's over there, but it's infused in the whole space.
Yeah, I think we can agree that there's an alien presence,
right? So that
active in the world. Yeah,
and everyone can feel it, and everyone's on edge.
Right.
Pretense. The evil spirit hides behind the possessed, and the priest must force the spirit to name itself. Sometimes the exorcist cannot shatter the pretense for days. And if he fails at that, all is lost. So it makes me think of all these organizations that pass themselves off as beneficents. So, this, UNICEF, and we're off with the children, and, they send these.
You know what it reminds me of, actually? It reminds me of trying to get Ketanji Brown Jackson to define what a woman is.
Ooh.
Name yourself, right?
Name yourself. She couldn't even name herself.
Wow. And my, if in a perfect world, my response to her when she said, I'm not a biologist, I can't tell what a woman is. Well, I'm not a proctologist, but I can tell him what an asshole is.
That's great. Steve, that's mafia, right?
I want that on
That's mafia?
I want that on my fucking tombstone. Okay.
I'll make sure it's done.
Oh, you're
All right.
not with me, are you?
Oh, I hope not. I don't know. Breakpoint is number 3. So this is complete and dreadful confusion. A peculiar pain of apparent contradiction of all of your senses. So there's synesthesia. Everything
Is that in the person? Is that in the exorcist, or is that in the person who's possessed?
It's in the exorcist.
So
And
the
his
exorcist has synesthesia?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
So it's like this, it comes in and it's just like, well, it's like an MK Ultra shattering, like everything is splintered. And so you're hearing through your mouth and your taste, and you're smelling through your ears, and, it's all a jumble, and mass confusion takes place.
I bet Benito knows about that.
Who?
Benito, he's somebody who watches the show.
Oh, okay. Maybe he does. A peculiar pain of apparent contradictions of all the senses, synesthesia.
Right.
The breakpoint is reached at the moment when the pretense has finally collapsed altogether. So there's no pretending that this isn't happening. And the spirit now acts personally and speaks in words like I or we or our or mine, instead of pretending that it's the possessed who's talking. So now that this is out in the open, and I think that's pretty much where we're at right now.
We're getting very close, and I was on.
I see a lot what's really out in the open.
So I was on with Nish yesterday, and we kind of got into this a little bit, but not through these various stages. And I was talking about the South Node in Scorpio and how things are revealed. Right. So when we had the South Node in Sagittarius, what was revealed was lawlessness, right? Because Sagittarius represents law, and there was no law that was happening. Like all this stuff was going on, and nobody was, they were doing the crime, but not, doing the time.
Very much so.
Right. So now we have the South Node in Scorpio. And if that continues in that direction, this gets to what you're talking about here, Krys, and that they will openly state, and it's happening now.
It is,
right?
I see it.
It's like there is this guy who has a Twitter account who was asking people if they knew like what type of porn and what level of porn would be good to introduce to children.
Yes.
Right. So this is what's happening now.
Yes. Yes.
They're starting to speak in a way where they're revealing themselves.
And they're like, what are you going to do about it?
Exactly. That's what's that. And we're going to see more of that. I'm telling you.
I believe it.
It's going to get more brazen.
It's written right here.
That's right.
Now, this is all out of Malachi Martin's book, Hostage to the Devil. And hostage actually refers to the priest. He puts himself in between the possessed and the evil spirit.
Right.
And he offers himself up as a hostage to save the person who's possessed. Okay, so the fourth stage is the voice. And when the voice shows up, it's completely debilitating. It starts out like a very slow, rumbling, kind of garbled, and you're just like straining to understand the words and you can't. And it's very distracting, and it must be silenced by the invocation of Jesus and the church, and not by the priest's own volition. So it's got to be like Jesus or the church has to be the intermediary. You don't come from your own ego to defeat this. Once your ego enters into this, you're done for. You've been defeated. So, but it's very disturbing, deeply disturbing, and almost on a physical level that this voice is so discordant. Then stage number 5 is the clash. And this is the nucleus of the singular battle of wills. So now they're at it. Now the gloves are off and they're just, it's all fisticuffs between the exorcist and the evil spirit. And the priest must actually bring this on. He must provoke this to happen, that there has to be this battle between good and evil. And I think that's where we're at. If he cannot get the spirit to engage here, again, all is lost and the exorcist is defeated. And this is a crucial point. So he has to antagonize and get this evil spirit to come out and actually do battle and show itself. If he has not been able to until now, he must finally force it to give its name, and then pursue for as much information as he can. The more the spirit is forced to reveal in the clash and its aftermath, the more sure and easier it will be for the expulsion when the moment comes. So this has to take place. It's got to be revealed. So to get the spirit to make its name. And I just keep remembering, was it Patrice Cullors who did that? She did that performance where she had the angel wings on and the real crazy outfit, and she kept saying, say their names.
Could be. That sounds like something that
but
they could do.
People did do that, yeah.
I don't know if it was her or someone else in the movement, but say their names of the dead people. Well, it could also, I don't know.
Well, that was her whole thing, was to invoke the spirits of the dead to help BLM.
Right. That was the Yoruba thing you were talking about.
Right. To force complete identification is a mark of domination of one will over another. So that's crucial. The spirit itself seems to suffer in these battles. As in Jesus' exorcism, he sends the demons into the swine. So in these exorcisms, in one of the case histories, the demons are actually arguing with the priest, like, well, where are we going to go? you have to send us somewhere. We need a place to live. We need a body to live in. Even the Christ sent us into the swine. So they somehow have to have a place. They're connected with place. That seems to be a really important part. And that's pretty much, those are the 6 stages. I think I got them all.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd say we're pretty well along here.
Oh, here we go. So stage number 6 is the expulsion itself. So the evil spirit does not give it up its place easily. It claws and fights and deceives and even risks killing its host before it will be expelled. A struggle torturous beyond imagining, an open violence that leaves all subtlety behind. What had possessed is now forced into the open. So the exorcist comes under fatal attack at this point. He is attacked by a stench so powerful that many exorcists start vomiting uncontrollably. And there's a pain in the physical body and also a deep pain in the soul. He calls finally on the spirit to desist, to be dispossessed, to depart, and to leave the possessed immediately. If the exorcism is successful, this is what happens. The possession ends, the sense of presence is suddenly absent. There's dead silence, and sometimes there are receding voices as they leave.
Interesting.
So I don't know. Do we need an army of exorcists? Do we all have to play the role of exorcist? How does this play out with what we're living through right now?
Well, if you're going to be an exorcist, you need an exorcism kit.
A home kit.
Right.
$400.
Yeah. So the real legit ones tend to be older and a little more expensive.
Wow, look at
It
that.
may have been used a few times, right?
Wow.
So it's all there. You got your Bible, you got your stakes, you got your cross, you got your vials of holy water.
Wow.
You got the mirror, right? So
And all in a little coffin.
all in the look. So if you are planning on taking up exorcism
Wow.
as a a side
It's an
hustle,
astonishment to me that anyone would have the courage to do that.
You'll need this. Look, your little garlic thing. Is that garlic right there?
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Sure,
So
to
there
keep it in the kit to
there you
keep things
go.
away.
But when you look at these satanic rituals, at the Super Bowl and where else? What was the one in England where they did the thing about the pandemic?
Before the Olympics.
The Olympics.
Right? The Olympics.
Yeah.
But really, when you look at Madonna's
Oh, the
behavior,
famous one where she was
Right?
Isis Baphomet, and that was at the Super Bowl. It was a Super Bowl show.
unbelievable.
Mhm.
Tell me that's not out in the open. They're like,
Oh, it was totally out in the open.
it's just like rubbing your nose in it.
But
So-
even something like what happened at the Oscars with Will Smith
Yeah,
and,
let's
and
talk
Chris
about
Rock.
that.
I mean,
Let's talk about
that there was an element of possession there.
something.
There was like at the end, even though Will Smith is smiling and everything when he leaves,
Right.
when he starts like shouting out, keep my wife's name out of your blah 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 mouth, like
Mhm.
he's almost possessed there. He feels possessed.
Well, he certainly
Right.
Right.
flew into action, didn't
Right. Because once he crossed that line, he couldn't uncross it.
That's right.
Once you got out of you broke, what is it called? The fourth wall or
The
something
fourth
like
wall. Yeah.
he? What is
right?
that?
That's the wall between the stage and the audience.
Yeah.
Oh,
And so he broke that fourth wall.
I don't know.
And then all of a sudden it became a whole different thing. And that's the point of acquiesce to whatever the possession was, whether it was to anger or whether it was scripted. I can't tell from here. But it's not a lot.
I think it was partially scripted, and then I think it went into a direction that
That is, strange feel like it.
yeah.
That could have been the case.
Yeah, I
or-
wonder if it was scripted, except that Chris Rock didn't know.
I think he knew that something might happen. Right. Okay. Here's where Will's going to come up and point his finger at you or something like that.
Oh, really? You think?
Right.
It wasn't a serious hit.
No, he used his fingers for
You
crying
know.
out loud. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was using his fingers. It hit him on the cheek. His face was a little sideways after that. Some people said he had a pad. You can, like, when you look at his face, there's like this thing it looks like it's a pad of some sort.
Oh, really?
But I've actually seen that on other faces, by the way. And they're not being hit. So I'm tending to think, like, what's really going on with people and you know, and their physiognomy. I've seen that before in other people. You don't really need a pad for a finger slap. Not a finger slap, right?
Not if it's among actors.
Right. You don't really need that. So I think that
you've seen it on other people. What
I have.
But what have you seen?
Other punches or other?
What have you
No,
noticed?
just like people's faces aren't. It's almost like they're pieced together in some ways. You know, they're not like just completely one continuous surface of skin.
Like they're sculpted.
Those rubber face coverings are astonishingly good.
Astonishing.
You know,
I'm wearing one right now, and you can't even tell, right?
I didn't even know.
In fact, I knew you were Joan.
This is Joan. Yeah, exactly.
Right. We're actually opposite each other.
Right.
We've been doing this for years.
Do you remember like those the Looney Tunes?
Oh yeah.
Those cartoons, and there was invariably a scene where they would like take off their mask, and then they take off their mask, and they take off. Remember those?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they'd like, it's like, okay, who's behind the mask?
Yeah.
And eventually they'd get to like, maybe they were each other, right? Like Bugs Bunny was Daffy Duck and vice versa. They would do that fairly often in those cartoons.
Didn't they do that in The Prisoner too? Where they were, you know, going.
We're not going to give away The
end?
Prisoner. Steve, we can't give away The Prisoner.
No, okay.
That's a
too
big spoiler. Big spoiler.
Right.
So Steve is referring to the TV series The Prisoner.
Yeah.
Which is a great TV series, by the way. If you have time and you're bored over a weekend, let's say you're reined in on a weekend, watch The Prisoner from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
It will change your life. Maybe not in a good way, but it'll change your life.
Open your eyes a bit.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of things in The Prisoner. Like there's an episode in The Prisoner where I think it's The Prisoner. I always get it confused, like with the Avengers, like because they're running at the same time. One of those shows has an episode of this thing where they're learning things at a really rapid rate through like subliminal downloads that are coming to them. Like this whole speed learn thing. I think it might be The Prisoner. Yeah. But the Prisoner's
been a long
brilliant.
time, but it's definitely worth
I
revisiting.
think
at
Michael
some point.
Hoffman talks about that in his books, and maybe James Shelby Downard, because that comes up in their books.
I have a copy. I have the box set of The Prisoner. So I have all
nice.
the episodes on DVD. But you can watch them now. I think they might even be on YouTube.
Right. So we're going to go back for a revisit of I, Claudius too.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Oh, it is pure genius.
Which I think will fit perfectly over
It's
things.
so well done.
You know,
Didn't Robert Graves write that?
He did.
he did. Yep.
I
But
think
the best character is Livia.
she
Augustus
is Nancy
Caesar's wife.
Pelosi,
She's like,
but with a brain.
but with a brain and just deliciously evil.
Didn't Robert Graves write The White Goddess? Wasn't that one of
Yeah,
his?
brilliant
Yes, he
book,
did.
The White Goddess. Yep.
More
And
of
he,
a
also has,
reference.
and he also has a really good Greek mythology.
I was convinced of his genius back in college when he did I read an essay that he had written, and it was on E.E. Cummings. And he basically reconstructed an E.E. Cummings poem to show what a genius E.E. Cummings really was, that he wasn't just cheating, right? That there was like a deep structure in his poem that he actually fleshed out. And I thought, man, this guy's really fucking
Was he somehow connected with the Fabian Society or some group like that?
Who, Robert Graves?
Yeah.
Maybe some, I don't know, but he was
Why
kind
do
of
I
off
have
by
that, like-
himself on the island of Majorca pretty much his whole life.
Here we go.
Did you ever
Menorca,
hear anything about that?
No, I just remember The White Goddess and that he had written I, Claudius, and
So
this reconstruction of this poem was pretty genius, actually.
Did you see I, Claudius? Did you watch it in the day?
No, that was a PBS thing, and I had like this with PBS. It was just
Well,
all too. It was all too
tell you
highbrow
what.
for me.
Give it
I
a
tell
shot.
you what, it is pure genius.
I'm sure it is.
You'll be hooked.
I think that.
And Derek Jacobi plays Claudius, and he is perfect. And he has a stutter, and he just does it so well. You'll get hooked like within the first.
I mean, John Hurt as a young John Hurt as not Nero.
Sorry, Augustus. I don't know.
No,
Who?
the other the depraved one.
Caligula.
Caligula. A young John Hurt as Caligula.
Oh my God.
A young Patrick Stewart with hair.
Wow.
No.
I saw it like back when it was running on PBS. Well, I must have been in my 20s. I don't know. But then about 12 years ago, we decided to revisit it, and it held up beautifully. There was nothing about it that was dated or, oh, this doesn't work for me anymore. It was good back then, but not now. It was pure genius. Highly recommend it. Because
All right, it's on the list.
yeah.
So
Good. Then we can talk about it.
Robert Graves fought in World War One.
Sounds about right.
He was born in 1895. And he
yeah, I
died
never
in-
read I Claudius, but I
this is
read White
interesting.
Goddess.
He was born in 1895 and he died in 1985.
Oh, huh.
That's interesting.
How do you do that?
Little inversion thing there. He lived a long time.
Yeah, I'll say.
He was 90 years old. Could you imagine? And I talked about this with Mark Edmund Jones and being born in the 1800s, right? 1800s. Think about being born in the 1800s, what the 1800s world was like. Even Robert Graves falls into that category. And you live to 1985, and you get to see the sweep of history and the development of all this technology.
Right.
1985, they've got personal computers in 1985.
Yeah. I mean, the change that we've seen is pretty remarkable, but
think about what we've
but
lived
from
through.
them, is much more so. I mean, just every element, I remember this show on, I think it was on CBS back when I was a kid. It was one of my favorite shows, and it was called The 21st Century. So this would have been, I don't know, maybe around 1970, late 60s. And it was about all the stuff that was coming, the flying jetpacks and all these things, and we just you expected the world to get, faster, better, and all these things. And then it stopped, progress in that way stopped until, until the age of computers. And then there was this vast change, but really, we drive the same speed, the cars have more or less the same gas mileage. There was planes, they brought in the SST, but then all of a sudden that was jettisoned. We used to hear them because they used to come across Long Island. So we would actually hear the sonic booms back in the, the mid 70s.
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of cool.
So, so something happened. Maybe when we got off the gold standard. But there was this sort of
Kennedy
freeze.
assassination?
Well, it was after that, but just seemed that there was this sort of this freeze in this progress in technology,
Or maybe Steve, it just went underground.
or maybe, maybe I just wanted to
Because they
drive
certainly
faster.
didn't have a freeze. The military industrial complex did not have
No,
a
but
freeze
our
in their
lives,
technology.
trains, planes,
Yeah.
automobiles, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Well,
tech-
so I have an interesting story to share about that. And it has to do with a fellow that I used to know pretty well. And his name was Phil Fisher. And I think it might be around Phil's birthday, although he's passed away. And Phil was a freaking genius. This guy was a genius. He was an Edison like genius. He just knew how to do shit. Never went to college. And when I knew Phil, he was obsessed with this maglev train. He had completely scaled out how to create a maglev train, and not just have the maglev train, but you could also do things like run cars on the maglev. So you could shoot your car on the maglev and stay in your car, and then your car could be taken off. So it wasn't just trains. It was capable of doing all sorts of things, right? And along with that, he created this state-of-the-art trestle system that was built with hemp. So it could withstand earthquakes and, all kinds of, potentially, devastating effects due to weather or inclement conditions, whatever. Right. And out of that, he actually patented something called edge lock, which was a plate of hemp that had like edge lock in it. You could actually take this and then you could build with it, right? You could like create walls with it and everything. So that came out of his work. And he was so eccentric. He was an Aries. He was so eccentric that he never traveled by plane. And he drove these Chrysler Imperials, I think right around like a 62 or 63. And he loved this car, the Chrysler Imperial. And he would have Chrysler Imperials in like storage yards all around the country, so that if he needed to get to a place and replace a part, he had a car there already. So he was really eccentric, but he was one of the most generous people I'd ever met. And he wound up having a meeting with this guy in Seattle, and he was a professor at the University of Washington, and he showed him his plans and his technology and everything. And this professor said he validated him, and he gave him this write-up, and he said that his technology was easily on the same par with the Japanese and the Germans, and quite possibly beyond them, right? So he has somebody who's accredited, who is acknowledging that he was the real deal, and this technology was the real deal. The reason I'm bringing it up is because it's never seen the light of day. And he was living in the state of California, where they keep, trying to push this high-speed rail from Sacramento to Los Angeles. And they, of course, they run into all kinds of problems with, lands and leases and all that stuff. But his version of that would have been perfect, right? It would have been perfect. It would have allowed people who travel by train to have a state-of-the-art experience. He had it all planned out. And in fact, in order to fund the company, they actually created a toy based on this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that they could actually,
one?
Yeah, and actually sell the toy so they could help fund the company. And for whatever reason, it just never saw the light of day.
Well, you wonder what the reason is with the English owning the patent office. So you can start to look there.
Oh, yeah. So these things, Steve, just to give you an example, like they're there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Phil had been working on that stuff since the 70s, 80s, up into the 90s when I met him, and even beyond.
Yeah.
So they're there. And the problem is that, they don't want to change like the social economy. They can't move it ahead and accelerate it too fast. Now we're getting to this point where it's like, okay, we'll accelerate the social economy, but we're going to control everything. You can't do anything. You cannot innovate.
Right.
And that's a scary thought.
Well, let's just hope it's not perfect possession. Let's hope we're at the stage where it can still be reversed.
Yeah.
We need an army of exorcists.
Right.
That's what I was thinking. I think we all have to be exorcists at this point. We need it.
But in order to do that, the preliminary to that is for us to be very, very stable spiritually. Otherwise,
that's right.
Otherwise, we're all at risk.
Right.
It just brought back the memory what you're talking about. We took the train from London to Paris through the Channel Tunnel. Through the Channel, and it was like the most pleasurable, I think, ride we've ever taken.
Smooth as silk.
Smooth as silk, or 100 miles an hour or something like that. And, really nice eating cars and what have you. And it was like, I don't know, 2.5 hours, maybe, London to Paris. It was great. Got to drive. I remember driving by. I was so thrilled. That big factory that's on the Pink Floyd Animals cover.
Oh, yeah, I remember you pointed that
I forget
out.
Water something station. I forget what it was. Anyway, that was.
Now you've got me thinking about these underground trains, right? That basically, what do they run at, like something like Mach 1 or the super fast? The underground train network that basically travels around the planet one way.
Yes, we've heard of it. Yes.
It's like pneumatic. It's like a pneumatic train, I think.
Is this
Yeah.
part of like the dark system? Is not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It'll bring us back to the beginning. So we talked about the tunnel across the Bering Strait connecting Russia and the United States, and
Interesting.
what
right.
what a difference that would have made if that was actually built. Remember, Sun Young Moon was partnering with somebody. I think it was a neocon. I can't remember who now.
It's always a neocon.
Try to
under every bed.
raise money to do that.
Yeah.
And who can you trust if you can't trust Sun Young Moon?
Right. Right. Well, his grandson now has taken over the ministry.
Has he?
Yes. So Ryan, who is probably in chat today, he's been out to the event 2 out of the 3 years that we've done this. And in fact, put the bug in my head about doing this thing. He actually attends some of these services, and they're like full on patriotic, right? They're totally into guns and learning how to shoot. And, part of the message is also part of like, the Revolutionary War. It's a very interesting group.
And this is
The grandson of Sun Young Moon.
grandson.
Yeah.
You think it's legit, or is
Oh
it?
yeah, it's totally legit. Yeah.
Huh.
Totally legit. And apparently he actually sent me a book. It's like, I think it's over here somewhere. Where is it? It's over here somewhere. I have it. He sent me this book. It's all about like, their ideology and philosophy. It's really, there's like this interesting thread of patriotism and, the Second Amendment. It's a fascinating thing, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
All right.
Well,
Hey, it's been great, guys.
This was fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to talk about your press? Your
couple of plugs. Can
Yeah.
I? Do you want to get False Messiah? It's on the shelf with all the other books.
Oh, okay.
On the bookshelf.
All right.
So we have a new book by Peter Lamborn Wilson, who we've talked about a bunch of times. Used to be known as Hakim Bey, called False Messiah. It's a number of essays on esoteric Christianity. A lot of out there and interesting stuff, including Jesus as mushroom and things like that. So that's really good. It's a really good book. It's on our logosophiabooks.com website. All right. And then also looks like it's inevitable that we're going to enter into contract. Here's that book with, do you know Miriam Heinem? She's mostly known. So this is the False Messiah's great.
Is that Holbein painting? Is that
Matthew Eck, I think. It's not the Holbein,
okay.
right? But it's from a it's from a triptych with and triptych, but with the emphasis on trip, because it's a very trippy portrait of Christ from the 1500s.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
So anyway, that's.
But I just thought maybe you'd talk about Mindy's new book coming out too.
But that's not going to be for a while. But then we have the third book in Mindy's series coming out.
Mm-hmm.
That's too quick.
After Ever After, this incredible fantasy series where in
Nice
the first book
The artwork's really beautiful.
she predicts the plague, and the second book she predicts the war. So we'll see I forget what's in the third book. I just read it and edited it. All right, and then the third one, and I'm going to put I guess I'll put a link up in the comments section if you don't mind.
Sure.
I don't know, Miriam Heinem or Heinem, Heneim.
EIN.
Heinem. Anyway, she did a very famous book on film on colony collapse disorder that was really well received and well done for a while.
The beehives.
But she is now like the go-to person on the whole George Floyd incident. And she's been writing a lot of articles on it. And so we're contracting to do that as a book. And she's also going to be doing it as a film, which they'll work to complement each other very well. But she's
already made a short.
So I'm going to link to that and go ahead. Did you finish?
That's all.
And what she needs you can purchase, so they have the trials that have been going on where all the evidence is. Now you can purchase copies of all the evidence of a trial, but it costs a fair amount of money.
It's like $8 a page or
There's
something.
like $8 a page or $8 an item, and there are thousands of items. So anyway, so she has a GoFundMe page, and I'll link to that if you want to, because if you help her, then you're helping us help get the book published.
I just
And
have a
that'll give her,
question.
so that'll give her the evidence from the trials of the three guys and that are being that just concluded.
I think I have a memory of, doesn't YouTube like take down if you put a link in a comment section? So
Why don't you just go ahead and send it to me?
I think it would be better.
Okay.
Send it to me, and I'll put it in. I'll put the link in the
Yeah, because sometimes they make
show
it
notes.
disappear.
Okay. Okay, good. So yeah, so support her, support us through her. And anyway, so that one would be coming out maybe towards the end of the year. That's still, the process of being written.
Yeah, we're just.
But basically, yeah, we're going to be making friends left and right as we go on here. So we'll see where all that leads. But it's interesting.
Then there's the Alethea book, right?
Right, and that's
Walking
already
with-
yes, and she just put up an audio version of that.
Which is excellent.
Which is very good.
She reads it beautifully.
So Jean Hardigan Wayner talking about
Walking with Alethea.
which
is
gets-
Walking with Alethea. Yeah.
right, which gets back into the abusive priesthood in Baltimore in the 70s, and so that book has been doing fairly well for us, and she's been our most active author as far as getting her work out. So I think those things are going around. Krys is on Fine Art America. She's got some, and on Etsy she's got some of her original
I
artwork.
actually sold some wool. It's like,
Wow.
oh, I made a sale.
That's
That was
cool.
exciting.
Good.
So on her
Um,
Etsy page, is it called Philosophy Farm?
Philosophy Farm.
Philosophy Farm, which was the name of our farm.
So I have some of my paintings up there and some of the wool from the goats that you saw in the beginning here, they're Angora
Right.
goats. But I wanted to flip back to Miriam Heinen. She would make a good interview.
Yeah, let's get her on
She's
the
a
show.
journalist. She's
Yeah.
very articulate. She's deeply immersed in the
Yeah.
George Floyd event.
Well, I'd love to have her on
And,
the show.
Yeah.
We'll hook you up,
And if she's looking for a film producer.
or an editor or a producer.
She needs help finding a professional who can do the job, but then she'll need money too. But if you know of anybody who knows of anybody in that field,
Mm-hmm.
she needs help finding someone who can take on making this into a documentary. She's got just a short and it's excellent, but
Mhm.
she needs someone who can take on the project for doing a documentary.
Yeah. Okay. Well, 2 degrees of separation or something like that.
Something like that.
I'm sure I
Yeah.
know somebody that knows somebody.
Right.
So yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah,
good.
well,
You guys
good.
are active. Good for you.
Yeah.
You're on a
Yeah.
roll.
Right, and then
guess
there's spring in the garden.
This spring.
Spring in the air. Okay. So
So
we'll
stuff needs to
we'll
get
see
done.
you. We'll see you a month from now.
Okay.
Yeah,
And we'll think real hard about something else to talk about.
and we'll see our friends in Chatlandia across time. Thanks everybody for hanging out.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys take care. Have a great weekend.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
it's
you, Robert.
it's the Crimis, and we'll see you again.
Yeah, I
See you,
really
Robert.
cracked up in the beginning when you had like the space shot with all the stars in the galaxy and you had the Crimis. It's like the Crimis in space or something.
Yeah.
So funny.
Your names are written in the
It
stars.
just
That's
cracked
it.
me up.
That's
Yeah.
it. We're,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
constellations.
Funny.
You better
Okay.
buy one. You better buy one of those stars.
Right. Right.
Before it falls from the sky.
Mm-hmm. A shooting star. I
Yeah.
want a shooting star.
What is it called? Catasterization. That's when you get sent, like in Greek mythology, when you get sent
Oh.
up into the stars. Catasterization, something like that.
Catasterization.
Hmm.
Is that a
So-
good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's a good thing.
Sounds
It's,
good.
it's better than death, apparently. Is to
Right.
Live in the stars
Catasterization. I'll hang with that for a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. All
All
right.
right, Robert.
You guys take care.
Okay. So long,
See ya.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, that was the Crimis. Big round of applause for them. I'll be back on Sunday night with Sunday Night Astro Live here on this channel. I decided to put this show on this channel today. Seems to work. There's more subscribers here too. and more people who are new to the channel, thanks to my pal David Palmer, you get to see some of the other things that I do and the people that come through this channel on Fridays, because we spend about 2 hours going into conversation, and I hope you enjoyed it. All right. Take care, everybody. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to step what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and brush up on your exorcism skills. They might be needed here very shortly.